All right. What's up, guys? Gus, come here. Gus, say hi, buddy. Say hi to Gus. Say hi, G-Man. Come on, Gus. All right. So, all right. Welcome back to Strong.Sistas YouTube channel. I am festive and ready for Christmas, trying to wear as many Christmas sweaters as I can between now and Christmas time. So in today's live, I told you guys during my healing amenorrhea video that I would do a follow-up live to answer any more questions that you guys have about my amenorrhea journey. So if we can try to keep the questions a little bit focused to my healing amenorrhea. So for anyone new here, I have dealt with amenorrhea for all of my adolescent life. So when I was 16 years old, I got my first period, my first and only period. And then I went through a number of orthorexic years where I just took like being healthy kind of to the extreme. I was always really lean, worked out way too much, never fueled myself properly. And so I did not have my period again for 13 years. I did a lot of sports. I worked out on my own, worked out with the sports teams, and never knew how to properly nourish and fuel myself. And then I also never respected or appreciated the female menstrual cycle. I was always told that it was not a big deal that I didn't ovulate, but like for a female, like ovulation and having a healthy period is a true sign of health. You are not living your optimal or best life unless you are ovulating and unless you are having a healthy and I believe pain-free period. So I figured today I'd kind of answer some questions about my healing amenorrhea journey, because after 13 years, finally got my period back after kind of dialing in some lifestyle and nutrition stuff. I would say it took about 20 months after finally committing to healing. It didn't take 13 years because most of those 13 years I kind of didn't care or didn't do anything to fix it. It was like 20 months of kind of dedicating my life to getting my period back. There was a lot that happened, a lot of stressful things that happened in that time period as well. But every this workout, nutrition decision was kind of based on that idea. So I had a few questions submitted beforehand, and I figured that I will start with these, and then you guys are free to put questions in the chat. So let me find these questions. Okay. So the first one, oh, sorry. Where'd it go? Okay. The first one was, did you ever struggle with extreme mental hunger? So I think that if someone is extremely mentally hungry, they're not eating enough. That's just my personal opinion, because if you are eating enough and if you are nourishing yourself and giving your body the amount and the nutrients that it needs, I don't think that you will be mentally hungry. I know what that feeling is like, that extreme mental hunger. I feel like that comes a lot with like orthorexia, because you're never properly fueling yourself and you're always overworking yourself. And so you kind of can't stop thinking about food. I understand that feeling and like waiting for the next meal and always thinking about food. But I found that once I finally gave my body the amount of food that it needed and the nutrients that it needed and started consuming more like balanced meals, I feel like that like extreme mental hunger went away. So I don't deal with that right now because of fully nourishing myself, but I understand that feeling of the past. And then the next question was, what was the weight gain amount like in the beginning? So I think whenever we're talking about like amenorrhea and just females in general, I think it's important to consider that menstruation is not mandatory for survival. And so if your body if you aren't giving your body the amount of nutrients and calories and tools that it needs, it's going to shut off the non-mandatory things, right? And so if you're super lean and if you're not feeding your body enough, that's one of the signs it's going to shut off, period, because that's your body saying like, I can't handle another human inside of you, so your fertility is going to go. So I think that kind of with any amenorrhea healing journey, there is going to be some inevitable weight gain. And that can certainly be uncomfortable, especially because that weight gain seems to always kind of start in the most uncomfortable places, right? And so in the beginning, you gain weight in certain areas like around your stomach, and you automatically want to be like, I'm going to eat less, I'm going to diet again because this is uncomfortable. I'm fat, I'm chunky, I look like an adult toddler. What is this? I get it. I really do. But the only way out is through. Like, you just have to keep going. And that kind of fat redistributes once your hormones are working properly. Because again, you are not living your optimal healthy life until your hormones are functioning properly. And I saw fat redistribution all throughout my journey. Things were changing all the time. I honestly have not weighed myself in 20 months. I do not know what I weigh. I don't care what I weigh. I did gain weight in the beginning. Like, I could just tell a lot of my old clothes were taken to Goodwill. That's like recommendation number one. Don't try to wear your old clothes because you were really small. You're never going to be that small again. So donate those clothes and get new clothes. And for the longest time, like, I didn't even get new clothes. So it was kind of more like sweatpants life and leggings life. So yeah, there was weight gain. I don't know how much. I don't feel like I gained that much weight. I maybe 10 pounds. I'm not sure. But yes, there was weight gain. I can't give you an amount, but the amount doesn't matter. It really doesn't. You need to find where your body is happy. And I'm not saying go gain like 30 to 40 pounds, but everyone's like healing weight is going to vary. Okay, I'm going to switch back to the chat questions because we've got some people in the live now. So I'm going to start at the beginning. Sorry if I miss anyone's question. I'm going to try to cover them all. Bear with me here. Okay. Rhonda K. This is a great question, Rhonda. She said, looking good. Reenact your reaction to seeing you had your period, please. So happy for you. I can't imagine how happy you are. Okay, so this is actually a really funny story. So I have a picture of my underpants when I got my period because I just couldn't believe it. And so like I have that saved on my phone. It's like one of my proudest moments, right? So it was like a Saturday, November 20th. And I just went to the bathroom and I like wiped and I was like, what is this? Is this blood? And I heard a knock on the door. And so I kind of didn't even have time to process it. But I saw blood on my underwear and I went to the door and it was my dad. And I was like, hi, thank you for coming to visit, but turn around. We're going to the Dollar General because we got to get some pads. So my dad was there and we drove to the Dollar General. It's the only store in this area. And to pick up some pads for a temporary solution. And he was the proudest man at Dollar General. He was like holding around the pad bag. Yes, my 29-year-old daughter got her period back. So I was able to celebrate this time with my dad, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I didn't even really process it for a few days. It was just like after 13 years, you just kind of almost think that things are never going to change. But it was a great moment, and I have it documented on my phone. Thanks, Rhonda. Okay, Nick Blackburn. What does a normal day of eating look like nowadays? I loved the Repeat inspired day of eating video, but I'm wondering if y'all have tweaked anything since. So Nick, I think that it's always important to remember that like health is always evolving. The way that you're eating is always going to evolve because our environments are changing. If we lived in like bubbles, we could eat the same thing over and over. If we had the same routine every single day, we could eat the same thing over and over. But our daily activities change, our environments change. We go through mental challenges, dealing with personal life issues, and all of that takes energy and depletes us of energy. So I think it's important to just always remember that the way you eat is never going to, I don't think it should always be the same. I think it should kind of fluctuate with the seasons. It should fluctuate with your season of life and what you're going through. And then also the season of the day, like how much activity are you doing that day? But I think it's always important to just monitor that with certain things like your digestion, whether you're pooping every single day, your body temperature. And so those are good ways. Those two things are good ways to know whether what you're doing now is working or if you need to make some tweaks. So waking body temperature should be like around 98 degrees Fahrenheit, and your pulse should be somewhere between like 70 and 90. And then those measurements should increase in the day, and then it will decrease near the end of the day, like dinner time. So definitely tracking that and tracking that you are pooping every single day. I think that those are good tools to know whether your current approach is working for you. So let's do a day of eating from yesterday. So I meal prepped some spaghetti squash this past week. I love spaghetti squash, and I love making spaghetti squash egg nests for breakfast. So I'll put butter on the pan, spaghetti squash in the pan, crack and separate my egg whites and my yolks. So I'll do 2 to 3 eggs, and I'll put the egg whites in with the spaghetti squash. I'll cover that. And so I've got the raw yolks on a plate on the side. I'll cook that until the egg whites are cooked. Transfer that to a plate, put the raw yolks on top, and it's a little delicious spaghetti squash egg nest. And then I'll cook a little bit of beef liver, and then I'll heat up something else that I meal prepped, whether that's like roasted squash or well-cooked potatoes and some sort of little bit of fruit. So that's like a typical breakfast there. And then I will probably go do farm chores, take care of all the animals. That's a lot of work. So I come back in and have a snack. That could be coffee and milk and sugar and gummies. That's something that I'll do. Or I'll throw in a carrot salad there. So raw carrot with coconut oil. Or I'll substitute that with like mushrooms. And then lunch is some sort of meal prepped. I meal prep a lot. It makes life a lot easier. Some sort of meal prepped meat, beef, chicken, whatever. And then broth, and then the same type of thing, whether that's potatoes, squash, or fruit, some combination of that. And then I'll have an afternoon snack, probably some milk and fruit, something like that. And then dinner is very similar to lunch. I'm really eating a lot of the same things these days because it's easy to meal prep. It's cold outside. And so my favorite thing for like reheating food is pouring broth into a pot and then putting whatever you meal prepped into that pot. So beef kidney or like beef or chicken hearts, whatever the protein, and then add in the already meal prep potatoes or squash, and then you just reheat that on the pan, and then you pour it into like this nourishing stew. And then before bed, I pretty much always do raw milk, honey, and maybe some gummies. So that's a typical day of eating. That was a long answer, but thank you, Nick. Okay, JC, what's your opinion on store-bought bacon? So I'm pretty particular with my dietary fat choices. My favorite fats are Angel Acres, nutrient dense, low PUFA eggs, beef fat, coconut oil, butter, and that's kind of really the only fats that I really do. And then and then sometimes seafood, and then of course rotate in chicken and pork, but I don't consume a bunch of chicken and pork. I think that if you are going to do that, try to definitely do pasture raised where the animals have access to more food than just corn and soy when they're in confinement, because the amount of nutrients in that animal depends on the amount of nutrients that they take in because they're monogastric animals. So I think definitely do pasture raised. And then if you can find corn and soy free chicken or pork, definitely choose that. I think that would be the preferred, but I personally don't use store-bought bacon. That's just my personal preference. Don't hate me, but I'm not the biggest bacon fan. I don't know. I yeah. So I think if it works for you, that's great. I would try to limit it and instead always try to support your local farmer with some pasture raised options. Okay. Chief Akif said, you dialed back your strength training quite a bit. Any plans to lift again in the future? How do you think you would approach it differently now? I love this question because strength training is a part of me. It was really hard these last 20 months to not strength train. I would really, like, the barbell would be calling my name, but I really refrained. And yes, I absolutely do plan to strength train in the future, and I'm going to approach it completely differently than what I did before. No more fasted training. Fasted training is idiotic, and it worked against my goals. And reflecting back on like my powerlifting numbers, I lost a lot of strength doing that. But anyways, I don't think I'm going to really do powerlifting anymore. I kind of had my time with that, and it can be super stressful to the central nervous system. I am going to incorporate strength training into a workout routine. I'm not going to be doing 5 to 6 days a week, more like 3 times a week, and nowhere near failure. Much more like just hypertrophy and kind of more bodybuilding, and fewer exercises per lift. So max 1 hour long, absolute max, and 3 times a week. But I'm not doing that right now because I want to make sure that I have at least 3 cycles in me so that my body can like re-regulate my periods for sure. I don't want to change anything. My next period will be coming next week, so I don't want to make any changes, but I really look forward to doing a smart strength training program in the future. And I'm kind of just going to do whatever I can with my equipment here in the garage. Definitely incorporate just more like barbell work. So maybe one day would be like squats, RDLs, and Bulgarian split squats, call it a day, and then things like that. But I'll definitely share that in the future. It's just, I really want to get 3 full cycles in me before I make any big changes. Okay. So someone said, sorry, I'm trying to stay in order. Any plans to use Sauna in the future? Thoughts on using Dr. John Jakish's X3 bar for brief resistance work? I like full body movements with the barbell. I really like to deadlift, squat, and bench. And so I think it's important to find things that you enjoy doing, because then it makes it easier to be consistent. And so I would prefer to do those movements than using that bar. I've seen that. But yeah, I still use the sauna. Sarah's at my parents' house right now. We'll have to film a separate video about why all of that. And so the sauna is with her. And so it's like sisterhood of the traveling sauna. It's like at my parents' house, then it's here. It's at my parents' house, then it's here. So I use the sauna. I haven't used it in like a week or 2, but maybe 1 to max 3 times a week for sauna to just sweat out toxins because it's cold outside now. Okay. Someone mentioned the vertical diet by Stan Efferding. That actually looks very similar to your current diet. Yeah, Stan Efferding actually has incorporated a lot of Dr. Ray Peat's principles in work. And I think that he has some great information. So if you are definitely someone who's interested in gaining strength and muscle, definitely check out the vertical diet. He has a lot of cool things there. Hey, Evan. Thank you, Evan. He sent I don't even know what it's called. He sent some cash. Thank you, Evan. I appreciate it. He said, keep it up, with like this emoji thing working out. Thanks, Evan. Appreciate it. Okay. Spencer. Hey, Spencer. Are you and your sister on progesterone and thyroid? So no, I am not on progesterone. Well, I'm taking progesterone right now in like the days 14 through 26. And that's suggested when someone gets their period back to just make sure that their luteal phase is good and lines up. And so I'm taking progesterone day 14 through 26 to just make sure that it comes back. And then you stop it and then you have your period. So I didn't use it before, and I've never been on thyroid. I think I made all my thyroid changes with diet and lifestyle changes. If incorporating thyroid works for you, I just find that it's incredibly, I don't even know where I would start there. So Spencer, I wasn't, but now I implemented progesterone as a suggested way to make sure that my period comes back, because I've seen a lot of people who have had amenorrhea and they get their period back like 20 days later or like 15 days later. And so, yeah. Okay. So RK said, have you noticed any changes not only in weight, but in body composition towards more feminine due to female hormone balancing? Yes, I believe I did. So I was always really lean and always did a lot of powerlifting and a lot of core work. So I thought I kind of looked like a SpongeBob. Okay. So kind of like very like SpongeBob-y box shaped upper half. And I would say that I now have a little bit more curves and I like it. I am woman. I'm woman now. So yeah, it definitely took some time, but I would say that like I got a little more curves. I definitely grew a little bit on my booty. And yeah, it's going to take some time. And I think it's important to remember that like proper female shape requires proper functioning hormones. And if your hormones aren't like regulated and like working well, then your body's going to just store fat in some weird places. Okay. Someone said, have you experienced adrenal fatigue? I would say that near the end of my carnivore journey, I definitely experienced fatigue. I don't really know exactly how like adrenal fatigue is defined, but near the end of my carnivore journey, I just didn't feel right. I felt stressed a lot, and I was doing a lot of, well, I think the combination of zero carb plus fasting just really wasn't working for me. Since then, I have not felt fatigued. I honestly am just like nourishing myself, providing my body the tools it needs for it to be able to maximize energy production. Someone said thoughts on okay, we're gonna stay with amenorrhea, guys. Some Mallory, are you okay? This is not really amenorrhea specifically. It's kind of more nutrition stuff, but are you going to introduce more kinds of fruits and veggies, especially if you can grow your own? Yeah, I think so. Sarah and I are starting our own garden in the spring, and so this should be fun. Have never gardened before, and you bet yourself that whatever I grow, I'm going to eat. So stay tuned for some updates on how we do there. There's a lot of planning involved, so we've got to start planning in like February. Emily said, other than food, what do you think helped you get your period back? I think that food is really important, but it's not the only thing. I think that your mindset really needs to change. And this was a really hard battle because after 13 years, you can kind of start to think that you are a broken car, old broken car. It's just no one can bring back to life. And so again, it took me 20 months. And so within those 20 months, like I really did struggle a lot with like, this is hopeless. Like I should probably just go get like bioidentical hormones or hormone injections or whatever. I don't know the other solutions. But I think being confident in the nutrition approach that I was doing, I think that plays a really big role, because you're going to find thousands of different pieces of advice and they're all going to conflict each other. And you need to be really confident with what you are doing to move forward. And so I think that mentality is really important. And I don't think that exercising a ton is a great idea, because that is a huge stressor. And you really got to just take yourself back and just think, like, if a body was not ovulating and you're forcing it to exercise, putting more stress on it, how is that going to bring your period back? It doesn't make sense. And so you've got to stop the over exercising. You've got to. I think that just has to happen. Okay. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to find the questions. Again, we're trying to focus on the Amenorrhea journey. Oh, okay. Katie said, this is awesome. She said she's watching this now after getting her period back literally yesterday. Congrats. That is awesome. So exciting. And she said, do you have any plans to change your nutrition to keep a menstrual cycle ongoing? Right now, I'm not going to change anything, but in the future, I'm really excited to like really match my training, my strength training and my nutrition to the different phases of the menstrual cycle. I think that it's really fascinating and it's something that we were never taught growing up. And I think that there are definitely certain times of your cycle where you need to be consuming a lot more food and a lot more minerals and rest a lot more in preparation. And I don't know the phases of the cycle well enough right now to talk about that. But in the future, I think that it would be cool to run some experiments where your nutrition and food are like matched up to the different phases of your cycle. So stay tuned for that. What supplements were you implementing? So like I said in my healing amenorrhea journey, like I am the worst at taking supplements. I just forget about it. I'm really good at eating well. I excel. I deserve a gold star. But supplements, I fail every time. I'm like an F. I've got to put like note. I've got to write it on my wrist. I've got to put note cards everywhere. So when I was during my amenorrhea journey, I definitely started my amenorrhea journey taking a lot of vitamin E because I heard that would like improve fertility and improve energy production. But other than that, just eating really well and taking some magnesium, especially magnesium bicarbonate. That's kind of all I really stuck with. I do think that, again, like I said, progesterone could have been helpful, but I didn't really know how to incorporate it back then. And right now I'm kind of experimenting a little bit with some like B complex, B vitamins. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Besides the progesterone days 14 through 26, but I'll share about that in a future video. Okay. Essentially in your cycle, like there's a certain time period when your body like produces a lot more progesterone and then your body stops making progesterone and that's when you bleed. And so when you're just getting your period back, it can really help to add progesterone in during that time period to just make sure that your body gets back on the schedule. Down the line, you won't necessarily need it. It's just right when you're getting back in the swing of things, it can be helpful. Okay, so this is a great question. It was on my list here. So someone asked, what's your opinion on like the all-in approach? So essentially, I think that there's one group of people out there who say to get your period back, your amenorrhea, you should eat anything and everything and as much as you want. And I think that can certainly work for some people, but I do think that like we need to look at timescales and timescale context because that can help get your period back. But I think it could lead to other issues down the line, like such as like too much estrogen or things like that. And so I just don't think it's a good idea to eat a bunch of junk food. That's just, it's not real food. So I'm always a real food nourishment proponent. And obviously take a more of a repeat approach, which includes animal protein, animal fats, mostly saturated, and then easy to digest carbohydrate sources and a lot of dairy. I'm never a fan of like, you should go eat some Twinkies. Like I don't think that is a good idea because it's not real food. Granted, it is going to give your body like calories. And I think that for someone who is struggling with amenorrhea and has had amenorrhea for a long time, especially like always orthorexic and never fueling themselves properly. I think that excess of calories can really provide your body a lot of relief. But why not take the approach of let's nourish ourselves with the most nourishing foods we can? Yes, give ourselves the calories, but then also these nutrient dense foods, which are ultimately going to help us improve energy production. And then when we do get our period back, we're at a healthier place, a healthier state. Not talking about weight, I'm talking about overall general health, like our ability to produce energy, how much polyunsaturated fatty acids, PUFAs, do we have like stuffed in us now after a more of a junk food approach. So I think that if one is struggling with more of like eating disorder tendencies, that approach can certainly help, because then you get past like food fears and things like that. But I think that there can be a little bit more of a structured approach, and it's not like you have to eat this many calories, track your macros every single day, weigh every ounce of food. It's more just like, let's choose good food, because nourishing real food is effing delicious. Am I right? So that's just my take on it. I didn't go the all-in approach. I did all real food in. Okay. So someone said, are you answering questions submitted on Instagram? So we're really behind on our messages on Instagram. This has been a really challenging year for Sarah, myself, and my family for a number of reasons, and we are just behind on certain things. So we're just doing questions for this live on the chat. Okay. So someone said, this is a great question. Any plans to do another full Monty iron panel in the future after having a normal cycle for a while? Yes, I would love to do a full Monty iron panel and compare. So if you're confused, definitely check out our interview with Morley Robbins, where he reviews our full Monty iron panel. And so this is how I knew that I likely had a lot of stored iron issues, even though I was told that I was anemic my whole life. So definitely check out that YouTube video. And I would love to do a full Monty iron panel. I've actually been talking to Morley about doing one again soon. I'm probably going to wait at least 3 to 4 months of getting my cycle back and then do that follow-up test, because it'll be really cool to compare. Okay. Someone said, did you experience extreme mental and physical hunger via the refeeding stage? So I was at carnivore before, and on carnivore, like, it's definitely not voluptuous foods, right? Because you're not eating any plant foods. And then all of a sudden you go to adding in plant food, and like plant food is a lot more voluptuous. And so at the beginning, I was like, wow, this is a lot of food, and I'm really full, because I wasn't used to eating like fruits and plants and things like that. So right in the beginning, no, I was rather satisfied. And then there was definitely a period where your girl was hungry. I mean, right now, like, your girl eats a lot of food. I think that hunger is a good sign. I think that when you aren't hungry, that's not a good thing, because hunger is a sign of health. And yeah, so right now though, like I know pretty much the size of meals that where I feel nourished, and I'm not going to be like, I'm not ravenous afterwards. Like, I eat the meal and I'm like, okay, I'm content. Let's go do the farm chores, take care of the chickens. Okay. Just helped you. Someone said, I think that having regular bedtime and manageable stress helped you so much. Yes. That is something that I haven't brought up. That's a really great point, Jean. Setting a bedtime and being strict with that bedtime, and putting sleep as a priority, because sleep is vital to healing and regenerating and improving your health. But a lot has happened in these last 20 months. I would not say that it was very stress-free. I think that I definitely tried to tailor my nutrition strategy to approach some of that. There's been some challenges this past year, but I think that putting your healing and putting yourself first in certain instances is really important during these time periods, and it's okay to do that because you deserve it. So yeah. Okay. This is a good question, and we haven't talked about this, but when you look back at your previous diet decisions, how do you feel? Do you sense that your previous dietary decisions did more harm than good? I cringe. I'm not going to lie. I definitely cringe. And this is part of the reason why, like, I continue to share my journey today, because I feel like I led some people astray in the past with certain things. And especially looking back at my time as an athlete, because I really did myself a disservice. I worked my butt off. I worked so hard, and I don't think I think I could have done better. And I think that I could have made my teammates and my coaches more proud, and I could have performed better by fueling myself. And I wish I put like performance over physical appearance. And that's so silly, but it's so hard to do these days because you're just bombarded with that in mainstream media, social media, all of this stuff. And so I think looking back, I really wish I would have realized that like having a six pack and being super lean does not mean healthy. It does not mean that you're going to perform well. I really wish I had that lesson like instilled in me from day one, that you are a female and that is awesome and you can do amazing things, but you should have a regular cycle and you should nourish yourself. You should honor that cycle. Okay, sorry. So yeah, and then I also think that things like fasting, I don't think that was necessary for me to do. I do think that it gave me a dietary break, or it gave my digestion system a break, because I was fueling it with weird stuff and stuff that wasn't working. And so when you take a break from that, yes, you're going to feel better. But what if there was a way that you could eat such that you aren't causing digestive stress, but you're giving your body the nutrients and tools that it needs? Like if you have two bodies, one body is fasting a lot and depriving itself, and the other body is regularly feeding itself like real nutrient dense foods and nourishing it, which body is thriving? Okay. Right. Sorry, I'm trying to get back on track where I was. Let's say there is a minimum. Okay, so would you not say there is a minimum required caloric intake? I don't think that I'm someone to be able to answer that. I think that a blanket statement of like 2,500 calories for like every body size, I think that that's not necessarily the case. But like, what's the harm in giving yourself minimum 2,500 calories? Like, especially if it's real food. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I think that it can definitely be daunting for someone in the beginning who's coming from like really low calorie and having to eat 2,500 calories. Okay, so I need to give some background. So kind of the all-in approach, Dr. Rinaldi, which Sarah and I talked to a bunch in this process, and I think that she has done incredible things, amazing work for people. And she really helped us with our mental side on this of like, girls, you've got to make these certain changes if you want to get your period back. So one of her things that she says is like, you should consume minimum 2,500 calories a day. And so I was definitely at that for most of my 20 months. I'm also really active. Should I have gone more? I don't know. But I do think that it's not just nutrient dense foods. I do think that the caloric intake matters as well, because your caloric intake is ultimately going to dictate how much tools your body has to produce energy, and your body needs energy to get its period back. Your body needs more energy to repair. And so I think the level of calories is also an important factor for someone in an amenorrhea journey. Okay, I lost my spot again. And then someone said, did you reverse diet your way to more calories? I think I took definitely a slower approach. I I was already eating like 2,000 calories or somewhere around there, maybe 1,800. And then I don't remember my exact amount, but I did track my food for a long time. And I think that was important in the beginning to like know that I was consuming enough, because if you're going to go through this journey, you want to, like, if you're putting in the effort, you want to make sure you're doing certain things right and you're checking certain things off. So I definitely, and also I wasn't consuming carbohydrates before, so I had no idea what 200 grams of carbs looked like for a while, because it was many months without them. So I did track and reverse a little bit, definitely like an expedited reverse. And what I did was like, all right, I was consuming a lot of fat and protein, because carnivore, a lot of fat and protein. And then I added in carbs, slowly reduced my fat, added in carbs, slowly reduced my fat, but I never went super low fat. I like would fluctuate between like 75 and 85, 90 grams, 70, something like that, grams of fat. And then you get to this place of like, okay, I know what that amount is each day. And it's really easy to be like more intuitive with the sizing. But I do think that tracking, if it's not leading to like eating disorder tendencies, I think that tracking can be really useful to just help guide you in your journey, in knowing that you're consuming enough, especially from someone who comes from more of like a restrictive past where they never properly fueled themselves. Making sure that you're reaching a certain caloric amount and maybe tinkering with that amount if it's not working after a few months, I think that can be a great way and a great tool. Did you know how many calories you average? So would you agree on a minimum 100 grams of protein daily? If so, do you know how many calories you average? Yes, I think that 100 grams of protein per day is definitely minimum. And I think if you're super active, I think that it should be more, especially if you are strength training. Like I would say that 1 gram protein per 1 pound body weight would be good for protein. I also think that on average, how many calories? Maybe 23 to 2,800 calories a day. I would say it's a pretty big window. But there are certain days on the farm where I'm outside all day long. Like most of today, because we had a really bad storm yesterday. So it's just like so many repairs that I need to fix out there. Okay. Morning after. So someone asked, this is probably a follow-up from my first video. What is the body temp number you are referring to for the morning temps after a great workout? Okay. So this, if someone is in an amenorrhea healing journey, or honestly like a thyroid or metabolism healing journey, one way to know whether your workouts are like too much for you is the morning after your workout. So let's say I worked out Wednesday around like 12 or 1, something like that. The next morning, I'm going to measure my body temperature and my pulse. If it's super low, then you know that workout was like a little bit too stressful, and you should take it down a notch a little bit at this point in your healing journey. If you do it again the next morning and it's still low, then that workout was way too much given your current state. You aren't fueling yourself properly. You aren't sleeping well. You aren't recovering. Something is off. So you should dial back on your training. So I hope that helps. It's the morning after, and you can do a few mornings after too, because obviously, like if someone is super healthy and they're trying to grow muscle, yes, you're going to put yourself through stress. Yes, you're going to see a drop in your body temperature occasionally, but what's important is it like recovers relatively quickly, right? Okay. Sorry, I lost. Someone said your hair looks great, and is it all natural? I just curl it. I don't put anything in it. I curl it on occasion, but I think that hair growth is an energy dependent process. And if your body does not have good energy, it's not good at making energy, why would it expend energy on hair growth? So I think that having like a good state of metabolism and being healthy can improve hair growth. And then also avoiding like really weird toxic stuff in your shampoo and products like that. But yeah, I curl it every once in a while, and I curled it for today's occasion. So thank you. Okay. So Kurt had, I really want to dial this point home. Kurt had a great, thank you, Kurt. I appreciate this comment. You had a lot of stress this past year, but I believe you know what your current path in life is, where you're supposed to be, and that helps with overall stress. So there are a lot of things that I could like cry about right now, and I may start crying. So I'm sorry if I do. This year has been challenging for a number of reasons. And it definitely has not been stress-free. I finished my dissertation. I defended. We moved like, I don't even know, 17 times in and out of this house. I was living at my parents' house. We dealt with mold toxicity, just like a lot of personal stuff. So it's been an extreme challenge. But I think what Kurt brings up is really important. For once in my life, in 2020, I made the decision to do something for myself, and that was change my career path to something that I was aligned with. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm crying now. I finally made a decision that I wanted to do, and that was to pursue like everything that we're doing with Strong.Sistas and pursue that business, and then also get into regenerative farming and help spread the word and mission about regenerative agriculture and why it's needed to produce more nutrient-dense food without all these toxic chemicals that are polluting our environment and making us all sick. So I think that being aligned with your path and not fighting like your internal self, knowing that that's not something that you want to do. Near the end of my grad school, I realized that like I was not passionate about certain things, and this is not what I actually wanted to do. And I fought that internal battle for at least 6 months or more. And I think being aligned and happy with what you're working towards, it's not going to be easy. It's never going to be easy. Like any business or job or anything that you do is never going to be easy. It's, are you aligned with the missions and the principles and what you're working towards? And I think that making that decision was also a big part of my healing journey, because I finally was more in tune with myself. And I think that's part of being a woman, is like following your intuition. And yeah, sorry for that. But Kurt, you bring up a really good point. Okay. Okay. This was a great question. Do you think that vitamin D optimization is an important part of healing your hormones? Do you get it via sunlight, cod liver oil, or supplementation? So I do not. I do not supplement vitamin D. I spend a lot of time outside. Like this summer, did I spend the entire summer outside? I may have, because we slept in tents for like 6 months. I choose to get it outside. I think that like we have a span of like 4 or 5 days here in Michigan where we have sun, and I'm going to try to spend as much time as I can outside to try to refill my stores, my vitamin D stores. In future years, not this year because this year has been a challenge, but in future years, I'm going to try to plan a like warm trip in January or February to spend in a warm, nice tropical place to try to like refill my vitamin D stores in the winter. Because I really do think that that is very important. And in Michigan here, we never know what we're going to get, but we could get like 3 solid months of just no sun, just gray skies. Okay. This is a really important question for someone in their healing amenorrhea journey. How do you guard yourself from toxic dietary and beauty culture? Because it's literally everywhere. I just cut off almost all sources of information, but afraid to find myself in echo chamber in isolation. It's a tough thing to balance, right? But I do think that being very careful with how you fill your news feeds on Instagram, whatever you also use, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, very careful with what you allow on there and what you allow yourself to see, because obviously they're like, that's people's highlight reel. It's not real life. And so I think that one, limiting yourself to those apps. So whether that's using like a timer app or something like that, and just limiting yourself to using them. And then also just being very careful with who you follow. I totally get the echo chamber in isolation, but that's where I think that like real friends, like IRL, in real life, IRL friends, it's really important, and developing those bonds, because then you can talk about anything but those things, right? Like you can just talk about like nonsense. And so for myself, I live kind of in the middle of nowhere. And so like phone calls with my friends are really important. And I think limiting yourself on the social media, and then when you are on social media, just being really careful with who you follow, and then just catching up with friends. That way you don't feel isolated and you're not in echo chambers. I hope that helps. Someone said, oh, the protein. Okay. Carb cycling. Social. Okay. So Zoe had a question, but it was kind of like a story and then a question. So I had no period for years due to hormone dysregulation, ovulation, and nutrition deficiency. Carnivore and keto saved my life, or saved my health, but I didn't get my period back until I started the carb cycle and had lots of cuddles with my best friend. If not cuddles for a few days, it would halt until it did. Unfortunately, I have had severe stress this year since my best friend was murdered. I'm really sorry, Zoe. That stress caused period wane and has been irregular with some halting. Would you address carbs' role in regulating period as well as the importance of social life? Wow, that's a lot. Zoe, I'm really sorry that happened. I think that you need to give yourself the understanding and grace that is a huge stress in life. And if that takes away your period for some time, like, do not be hard on yourself and do not think that anything is wrong, because that probably would have happened in anyone. So don't let yourself be like upset at yourself. Give yourself that time and grace and understanding to get back to where you were. And it could take a little bit of time, but that's okay. So I tried carb cycling for a little bit, and that didn't work well for me. I definitely did it when I started keto, and I would do like carb cycling around like when I thought my cycle was going to be, and like tried to imitate a cycle. That process didn't work for me. I know that it does work for some women, but I am at the point now where I think that carbohydrates are necessary. And I think that that's kind of obvious from what we share on our Instagram and on YouTube. And I think that it can vary, I guess, on the amount of carbs that one needs. But my T3 levels, my thyroid levels, when I was keto and carnivore were incredibly low. And, you know, there are some people who think that that's okay, but T3 is important for a number of processes. And like after getting a year back on carbohydrates, my T3 is totally normal. My thyroid labs are totally normal. So I think that carbohydrates are important for a number of things. And I also think that they can, if we are using carbohydrates properly, so if we are removing the things that block our utilization of carbohydrates, I think that carbohydrates can lead to better energy production, more CO2 production, carbon dioxide, and that can be incredibly, it kind of serves as like an antioxidant, and it serves a number of benefits. So I think that adding in carbohydrates was an important part of my healing amenorrhea journey because it helped me improve my energy production. I became better at producing energy, and that showed with my increase in my body temperature and my pulse, where I started at like 96.3 degrees at month 0, and then now like 97.5 to 98 point something. So like I saw a huge change in my body temperature. And to me, that just shows that I improved my metabolism. And it's not just your waking body temperature. It's also like that should increase during the day as well, to show that you aren't running on like adrenaline and other stress hormones. So for me, I think that the carbohydrates allowed me to get off of my stress hormones and off like running on adrenaline and things like that. And I think that that was really important for me in my healing, and not having to rely on a lot of gluconeogenesis or things like that. Okay, and then I didn't answer your second part, the social part. That is really important. And I think like I think that that's just a part of who we are, like feeling like a part of something and having real conversations. And people are just like so tied to like the social media side of things. And I feel like that's making things even harder on the social side, and being like a part of a community and having real friends. And I think that that's an important part to living a healthy and optimal life, as well. Okay, I think we're getting near the end. I think I answered most of these questions. Okay, and I'm already at 55 minutes. Thank you guys for tuning in today. I apologize for being MIA on our videos. We've gone through a lot this year, a lot of life challenges, and I truly believe that like we went through these obstacles and challenges for a reason, and we will come out stronger than ever. And really exciting things ahead. 2022 is going to be our year. It's going to be your year too. Okay. Just know that. And yeah, until next video, I'll try to share some more updates on everything that's going on, and then some exciting things that we have going on. Until our next video, enjoy your holiday season. Spend as much time as you can with your loved ones, whether that's Zoom or in person. Just spend as much time as you can with them. And until our next video, guys, make sure you are behaving like, Evan already said it, behave like an angel. All right, bye guys.